Hey, I'm Lauren. Welcome to my channel, and if you're returning, welcome back. Today's episode is going to be about what it takes to start an AI company. I am the co-founder of an artificial intelligence AI tech startup. And I want to, with this video, encourage every one of you to see yourself not just as, a consumer of technology, but as part and potentially as creator of technology. In this video, I'm going to try not to speak in jargon or the lexicon of tech. All right, let's get into it. So I have, of course, written notes because there's so much to this topic that I would be remiss, and I hate to do that. So I'm going to get into it. Essentially, let's just talk about kind of what we all know as tech, or what we see as tech. In all the conversation about AI and products and iterations and this and that, it can be lost on a lot of people within the industry that every person who is using these products doesn't necessarily know what these things are, what they mean. When we hear tech, I think the average person is aware of things like programming. You've heard that word before. You're a computer coder who writes programs via code. And so we kind of want to talk about that, but what I hope you come away with this video feeling and thinking is a sense that you belong to, and that you are not intimidated by it. And I say that with full recognition that this is generally an industry where it feels as though, and is depicted as though, and sometimes is actually the case, that there are high barriers to entry for people who don't match a certain demographic. And being someone who might not match that demographic myself, I've experienced how that can be alienating and fear-inducing. So I don't want to dismiss that in any way. I want to acknowledge it, and it will be something we discuss, but I think there's so much more to see, and I'm going to try and paint that picture. You're welcome to share with the audience your thoughts and opinions. All right, so the first point, as I was kind of getting into, is you belong in tech too. The honest truth is that the majority of people who experience tech get very familiar with it when they need it. So things like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, if you've ever typed a letter or a document, you've been using technology. If you turn on your cell phone and it lights up, you've been using technology that is charged. And the same way that you can use it, you can be a part of making it. There's a question of, what do I need to learn first? How do I get in this space? Do I need to know how to code? Fair questions, good questions. But what I will say is this. The biggest thing and the most important factor is experience. And you can gain that experience via your own, self-taught study, or you can go to university. Maybe you're studying computer science. But I also want you to be aware that you don't have to only be in computer science. You don't have to just be a programmer. There are so many elements to this industry and so many ways that you can be involved. So if your skill is marketing, or you're a graphic designer, or maybe you're someone who you just like playing video games and you just want to be involved in that, look at tech as just another science. So in the same way that people can learn about chemistry, they can learn about biology, you can learn about this tech industry and the business side of it, the accounting side of it. If you're an accountant, these companies need their money managed. They need their investments handled responsibly and in accordance to SEC regulations. So again, there's something for everybody. And even if you don't have a college degree, don't think that this is not for you. That's not true. All right, so we talked about the fact that there's many jobs. I'm going to name some of them. So you can be an IT specialist, and you're kind of there managing and maintaining servers and kind of making sure that all the hardware and the structure and the infrastructure, the stuff that allows everybody coding to stay up and on, you can be the person who is managing that, maintaining that. There are courses online. There are also things like data science, right? And that's looking at that information and figuring out what do we need. And then the coding and what is created is basically built out of that. It comes from that, it's derived from that. You solve the problem with the tools you have. Remember, coding, tech, technology, AI, they're just tools. What makes it intimidating is the hype around it. But remember, hype is just trying to give meaning to the work they're doing, or it's marketing doing its job. Don't let that deter you or scare you, even though I can admit that it can be intimidating. I've said programming quite a few times here. Let's talk about that. So when you program something as a developer or coder, you are essentially writing in the language of computers. In doing that, you're telling the computer, similar to a step-by-step instruction that you get from IKEA, right? You're telling that computer, perform these tasks when you get these inputs. So if I press 1, you need to deliver box 1. If I press 2, you deliver box 2. Now there's a whole lot more detail we can get into, bits, bytes, what it means, ones, zeros, and then layer on top of that. But I honestly don't think you need to really know all of that. You're better knowing these bigger chunks of information, and then you take what works for you and see if it's interesting. Okay, often the first question that I get, it's a good question, is what language should I learn? Because so many people come at the tech industry thinking specifically about coding in that job because they're good jobs. So to that I say that you can't really go wrong. Wherever you start is where you start. Typically people start with Java. There are a lot of open source, or let's say community-based programs and applications that you're able to kind of update and make your own changes using Java. And beyond that, you've got Python, you've got C. Yeah, you can essentially start there. As you're going through, you're probably also going to experience, if you're into web design or graphic design, a little HTML. That's the one that tells your websites, you know, this is where you're going to place the header and the title and the body and that sort of thing. So you can start with Java and you can move on. You can start with Python. Typically, if going for a computer science degree, which will give you a really nice background, but of course that's not the only thing you want to have. But it will teach you C++. If you are interested in gaming, you know, C++, being in that industry and coding for that, you'll want to know that one because that's the powerful language. There are some languages that can accomplish more than others. There are also some languages that are harder to break into or destroy than others. Bugs that you experience or things not working well, that happens, but there are certain languages that have different levels of difficulty and different levels of functioning. Kind of like in a toolkit, you've got your drills, you've got your chisels, and then you've got like your little painter's brush to get rid of any dust. When you look at languages, it's best to not think which one's harder, which one's easier. First, ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish, and which language is that typically done in? And then as you get more advanced, there's things like, you know, building your own language to accomplish certain stuff, but that's literally for another conversation. So we talked about what some of the jobs are. We talked about what some of the programming languages are. As we're talking about tech as a whole, I do want to mention you might experience gatekeeping. It's basically when you find someone not giving you the information you want to have, you're not a part of the club. That usually happens if you are not whatever the typical look or presentation is for an industry. This happens across industries, entertainment, you find it in finance as well. The only thing I can say is this, you will encounter it. In order to be ready for it, there are things that you can do. But I don't want to fearmonger, because if somebody thinks that they need to gatekeep an entire industry or say like, well, you wouldn't know, they're not dealing, their scale and their focus is too myopic. And typically they're not going to be around very long, because again, this video is about the experience of founding a tech startup, and explicitly we're talking about AI, in which you've got a lot of complex problems to solve, a lot of nuanced situations that you encounter, and at some point it needs to be all hands on deck The same way that when you're in a ship and you're at sea and you're dealing with the waves, we can't afford for there to be a whole lot of chaos. Everyone has things that they do, they should communicate, know your plan, execute. And try and keep to your deadlines. Try not to be intimidated by gatekeepers. They can come across sometimes very like, I know what it is and you don't. But remember, that's ego. You'll find it in every industry. You'll find it a lot in tech because of the fact that right now technology is kind of the gold rush. One of the typical things you'll experience that is part of gatekeeping is jargon, meaning using the language, acronyms, code, insider speak, inside jokes that as the listener you might say, ooh, gosh, like I don't know those terms. Should I be here? Yes, you should. There's nothing wrong with saying, what does that mean? The tech industry is wonderful because it brings so many advancements. It's offered things like telehealth. It has connected people to content and information they'd never have access to normally. It also has brought with it a kind of insider experience. Don't worry about that. You'll get that. As you go through your process, you'll have your own experience and you'll define things. And being able to say, what do you mean by SaaS, S-A-A-S, software as a service? What is that? Ask the question. Smart people ask questions. People who are interested in their ego being satisfied, stay quiet. Or people who are afraid, stay quiet. Don't listen to that instinct. Ask the question. You're better off knowing what it is and looking stupid in the short term to have the knowledge to look not just smart, but be smart in the future. A lot of times, the industry just overcomplicates things, and there's really simple ways of saying it. You could have just said it like this. Instead, they said it like that. That is not a reflection of you. That is simply the communicator failing to speak in the language of their audience. All right, okay, let's go to the next thing. So I'm gonna talk about what's it like being a boss. The fact is, it's about leadership. Every person has a different style. Different things work for different people. When you're dealing with a startup and when you're dealing with just running any company, you can be in tech, you can be in retail, finance, or shipping. The thing that really matters, just like in speech making, is knowing your audience, knowing who your staff are, what motivates them. Typically, for most people with work, it's money. But there are other things as well. Maybe this worker is motivated by being in a team and they really love that group experience and they need to be ensconced. Give them a room, a whiteboard, a few laptops, and like a team, and they're gonna go and they're gonna solve that problem. And there are other people who are like, I want autonomy, I want to do what I want to do, I've got 1,000,001 ideas, I don't sleep at night, and I accomplish it. Knowing who your team is and what motivates them goes a long way to, as a leader, having an effective team. That said, it's also important as a leader to know when to be a leader, meaning it doesn't really matter what everyone wants. Here is the goal. You can't come down here. Everyone needs to be up here and achieve it. And in that way, when we talk about leadership, that's where you hear things like, oh, it's a lonely experience. It can be really hard at the top. I don't want to scare you. This isn't about fear mongering, because the fact is that most things, solo is the experience. No one goes through most of life with a companion there all the time. So if you've ever done anything by yourself, you can do this. I encourage you to not go at founding a startup alone. I think one of the best things you can do is find people who are smarter than you at certain things and then give them the reins while having the same vision and knowing the end goal. Being a boss, you still have to be able to communicate with those individuals. You have to know a little bit about everything or a lot of it. It depends on where you're starting. It depends on what you're creating. But you're going to be working with personalities, and there are going to be days where your ego gets bruised, your feelings get hurt, and you're going to have to keep going. There are going to be days where you need to put your foot down and you will be unpopular and you're going to have to keep going. There are going to be days where you're having a sucky day. It's hard Doing tech is hard, but you have to keep going. That said, I'm going to say something that I think really does not get touted enough in startup culture, and that is that you should take breaks and take them often. And force them on yourself if you don't want to break. It's only too easy to start only focusing on the goal and you stop working on the present and making sure that your health is in line, that your staff is still motivated and in line, that their health is in line. And a lot of company culture is dictated top down. So at companies where you find everyone's just like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, work hard, play hard. Like the bosses are usually like that. You find that also in a lot of high risk, high reward industries, which is why in tech startups, it's a similar thing. It's a lot of risk because you're putting in a lot of resources, whether that's money, time, people, usually it's all of them. And you're hoping for this thing on the other side. So you really go and you go all in. I encourage you to force the brakes on yourself. It helps you to step back and remember the big picture so you don't get myopic, meaning you don't get too tunnel visioned and then you start to get on the detour because you didn't realize, ooh, I've been stepping an inch to the left every few feet. This is not where I want to go. And yeah, as I said, there's no such thing as I'll sleep when I'm dead. That's not fun. Don't fall into the trap of turning having a life into a prize to be won only if your startup succeeds. Have friends, have fun, have off hours, because we only get one life and you cannot buy memories. If you're looking into starting your own tech company or any other kind of startup, remember that you still have to live while building. The balance is hard, but that's what alarms are for. That's what notifications are for. I've even done where I've asked team members like, hey, tap me on the shoulder at a certain point because remind me that, you know, this is lunch. There are times when the sacrifice makes sense. Let's say you're like, oh wait, this person I've been trying to talk to for the last 3 months is finally available. It's in the most inconvenient time at the most inconvenient place. I'm gonna go anyway. There are times when you need to make that call and just sacrifice. Just know the difference between sacrifice and self-punishment for no reason. It's too easy. It's too easy to fall into that trap, and I just think it's not talked about enough. I think the industry glorifies pain for gain, and I'm like, but this isn't weightlifting. Know your industry. This is not that. You only get one mind and one life. Also, it's important to be true to your word and have tact. Being true to your word, it's not just about, I said this and I deliver this. That is part of it, and it's absolutely necessary. You want to, as much as possible, be someone who your investors know, like, all right, even if it's a day off, I'm gonna get this delivery. Or if this is going on, it's because an act of God, in legal terms, that is jargon, but basically it means something that was deeply uncontrollable and could never have been predicted or helped, like a hurricane, you know, that got in the way of this deliverable. But generally, you want to be true to your word. But for me, that really specifically means you want to be someone who your team members, I like to say team members, you want to be someone that is consistent. Like as an energy, they can more or less depend on you to be about the job and at the same time have a good attitude. This is not about niceness or not nice. There are times when you can't be nice, and that's really important to be okay with that. Don't think you have to be nice all the time. But if people are doing work for you, they have to be able to know that they're not going to come into a boss who's like hollering at the top of their lungs, will never admit that they're wrong, will never learn new information or seek out information if they don't know it. You've got to be someone who's able to adapt, grow, and listen. If you can't do that at all, you're going to be on a treadmill for years going nowhere. It's really, really important when you are in a startup for you to be adaptable. You need to be adaptable and listen. Similar to how any of you watching this are now adapting and learning something about tech, about startups, and soon enough about AI. Don't worry, we're getting there. Have tact. That's the last point here in the being a boss category. Tact is what will allow you to keep the different personalities from pulling in different directions. but instead going in the same direction. Tact is knowing situationally where you are and responding in an appropriate way to that situation. It's not something I see enough. There are many industries that are like that. I hope that we all learn to be kinder to each other and communicate with more clarity, but also with proper timing so that we don't cause unnecessary chaos and waste time, because time is money. There are giants in the land. That's something that you're going to come across if you're a startup. Basically, you have this idea, it's brilliant, it's beautiful, you see the vision, you can see yourself there, you can see yourself as the biggest, tallest, baddest thing in the world. Good. Keep that. Hold that. Like, breathe it, smell it, taste it, know what it looks like, know what it feels like, know what it dresses like and sounds like. Hold on to it. And here's why. Because when you see, as you're going along and you're excited, that initial burst of energy, what's going to happen is you're going to have some failures. Most tech product does not work. I know that sounds crazy, but I think anyone who has had an issue with their printer or has run into, you know that tech does not always work. There are bugs, issues, ways that the program kind of didn't quite run the routine properly. It didn't run all the way through what it was designed to do. And oops, you get an error. You get a 404 page, you get something. And basically, at that point, it's really easy to get halted in your tracks, to be discouraged. No one likes, driving along, it's a sunny day, smooth road, new pavement, fresh sports car, top down, and then you crash. No one wants that. Resilience is going to be really important because you're going to start looking around and you're going to see giants, people who look like they're going at 1,000,000 miles an hour past you, people whose teams have 10,000 more people than your team. Wow, their budget is this and they just got investing for this. And there's so much that can distract you from the goal. It's only too easy to get in your head and not stay on target. So what I like to say is acknowledge how you feel. You need to give yourself the respect of knowing that your work is not easy and that you're blazing a trail. Again, I'm talking specifically about the startup experience. If you're in a startup and you're in the tech space, generally you are also doing something that hasn't been done before. And maybe I'm universalizing my experience because I'm working in AI. I founded an AI, artificial intelligence company. So there is a stronger jungle atmosphere to that trailblazing. And the minute you stop deluding yourself that this is supposed to be easy and you're supposed to get there, you also are allowing yourself permission so you can get back to achieving the thing that you set out to do. In my case, build artificial intelligence. In your case, it might be create an app or design a game, whatever it is. And again, all of these and the relevance of this to you will depend on the difficulty. This also applies to entrepreneurship in general. Everyone is not going to be able to be with you throughout your journey. Similar to friends, right? They say some friends you have for a short amount of time, some friends you have for all of your life. There are your friends you go clubbing with, they're the friends you have brunch with, they're the friends that you'll cry on their shoulder. It's very similar with teams, and it's important to know this going in, because especially if you're putting all of this time and your heart into it, it can be kind of oh, that hurt because I saw us all on the mountaintop together. Just remember that everyone doesn't want to go to the mountaintop, or everyone doesn't know or have the same picture in their head of what the mountaintop is. There will be some people along the way who go, oh, I thought this was more of a hill. So I'm gonna go over there because I prefer it's a little flatter. You're gonna find people in the process though who are also gonna be listen, is this Everest? Because it's either Everest or we're going to the North or South Pole. Either way, I'm in. So you're gonna find people, you're gonna pick people up along the way. If you're a human who's trying to keep your friends in your 30s, you'll also know what I'm talking about. Everyone doesn't stay forever, but that's okay. It's not going to kill the dream. It's not going to even kill the possibilities or opportunities. All it means is you find other people. And sometimes too, it also helps you to further define what you were actually looking for. Because as someone leaves, you go, you know, this person was really good at this and I love this, but actually this other thing, they didn't do so well. And I prefer somebody who's better at this than that. It's an opportunity to refine not only your team, but what you're looking for, and make sure that when you're headhunting or calling friends or whatever it is you're doing to bring people into your team, you're able to get what's going to make your business succeed. Because all of this is with the goal of business success, financial reward, and hopefully, you know, a little emotional reward if you're attached to your business, which most startup founders and co-founders are. You don't want to be so in tunnel vision that you can't hear good advice or good counsel. But you do need a certain degree of it, because there will be those moments, like I said, when you're not a nice person. You are a business person. You are an owner, a founder, a creator. And you're not going to be popular because you're going to make a request that everybody stay a little bit longer. And they're like, I want to go home. I was planning on heating up this or ordering Thai food and watching Netflix. I want to unbutton my pants. I want to take this bra off. You know what I mean? Not that you necessarily hear that, but it's what's going on in people's minds. And it's what's going on in your mind too. A lot of times, that position when you're not creating the superstructure that everyone's working in, you forget that the boss is also that kind of human and wants to take the bra off or wants to go eat, you know, noodles and not care and put their feet up. But again, if you're trying to found a startup, found a company, there's just things you have to suck it up and do within reason. Sleep. It's important. The only way you fail is when you decide to stop trying, or like if you've absolutely destroyed like your life. You know what I mean? I'm not saying be so committed to the goal that destroying your life makes sense. That is terrible. That is absolutely terrible. I'm also saying don't sacrifice joy and happiness. Don't sacrifice every relationship you have. But generally, having never say die attitude. It's similar to what you see with boxers or athletes, where there is a point where they say, I'm gonna win, or I won't say the other part because again, I don't necessarily agree with that philosophically. You have to be willing to go further. And I say that within ethical and legal and all of those really good boundaries. You're gonna put in extra time, you're gonna be there later than everybody else, you're gonna want it more than everybody else, you're gonna dream about it, you're gonna smell it more than everybody else. Yeah, and there's a moment where, there's gonna be many moments where the pressure will get intense and you're gonna say, what am I doing? Why am I here? Why did I do this? You're gonna be hearing everyone finding fault with something you did. Somebody's gonna say, you should have done this, you should have done that, and you know, oh, we're here because you didn't, or oh, this happened and you should have. Because that's part of leadership. It's really easy to say when you're not the one having to make the final decisions, they could have done better. If you've lived on Earth and you've had any task you had to complete, there's a point where somebody was just pointing out endlessly what wasn't working, and you're not getting back pats in those midnight moments. You're holding yourself together, and in those moments, it's okay to cry. It's okay to get some food. It's okay to take a nap to recharge. Figure out your plan. Get back to it. The failure is in the quitting. The failure is in the stopping, not in the having difficulty, not in the being unpopular. It's in the quitting. Take advice from people who've blazed similar trails. If they're just a cog in the wheel somewhere, they have very little clue. This is not said to diminish the value of input from people who may not have expertise or may be, you know, in simpler jobs. Brilliant ideas come from everywhere, right? But more so I'm talking about criticism and knowing the difference between constructive criticism and somebody just having a gripe and being envious for whatever reason, or hateful for whatever reason, or prejudiced for whatever reason, or even if they're just kind of a pessimistic soul. You have to be a bit of an optimist to be in a startup. You have to believe you can and that it's possible. And when you're working in artificial intelligence, you really have to believe you can, beyond most people's understanding. So Make sure that you're only really getting healthy input from people who've traveled similar roads. Might not be in the same industry, but in a way that, you know, oh, you look at a Steve Jobs, oh, they fired him and then they had him back. Oh, all right. So when your team says you suck, it doesn't necessarily mean that. They might not actually understand the value you deliver or understand your communication style. That's an opportunity to either move on to a new opportunity, or maybe it's you improve your communication skills, get yourself back on board. Again, it's being resourceful and adjusting, moving the levers until you get what you need. You look at people who have blazed similar trails, and then from there, you're able to get much more relevant advice. Seek out information. When I see leaders who put their feet in the dirt and refuse to move ground when they're getting sage advice from people who actually know what they're talking about and actually mean well and actually want the best for them, that's so painful. So don't be that guy or gal or person in between, they, them, all genders welcome. Everyone can be a boss. Don't be that person. Find similar friends and champions, especially if you're not the typical in a space. And in tech, there is a look. And if you don't fit that look, it's lonely. At times, it can be intimidating at times because there's a human need to belong, and it doesn't matter how much of a great leader and independent boss you are. We all want to have community. I feel like we can just let our hair down with people who understand it the way we understand it and feel it and live it. And so that's why it's important to find people who are similar, not necessarily only basically, you know, aesthetically. Similar could be you have a similar outlook on life. You value similar things. You come from the same country, or you speak the same language, or you have some of the same hobbies. It's important. Human beings, we are social as a species. Just because you're doing something hard doesn't mean you have to be alone and with no confidants. No. Find your friends, find your champions. The champions are the people who will put their neck out to vouch for you when it doesn't benefit them. You want those people on your side. They might not look perfect or sound the way you would sound or do everything exactly the way you would do it. Don't judge that. Look at the heart, look at the result, look at the care they have, and look if they get what your vision is. If they are going in the same direction as you, that's all you want. More hands carrying the ship. So let's talk about AI, how to get into this space. I grew up in it is the shortest answer, TLDR. I grew up in it. But let me give you the long answer. I have a lot of hilarious and crazy stories and interesting things that I could share, but we would be here too long. But essentially, my father is a software developer, and he started working in the mortgage space, building large systems. When I say large, I mean hundreds of millions of dollars worth of transactions with banks like Citibank, ABN AMRO at the time. You know, just huge systems. And that's the norm. That's what I grew up witnessing. I remember when I was 3 or 4, and he was in college getting his computer science degree and learning how to turn on, you know, a computer monitor. And at that point, I think it was still command line, whatever, to start up. And basically that's for people who don't know what that is, that's when you see those like green letters on screen and you type in this certain letters, you know, series of letters, or and they tell the computer do X and you get a result. So I grew up with that. I've witnessed every iteration of Windows. And as you can see, I have an iPhone, so I'm familiar with iOS. There's been Linux experiences. It's just, you know, I went to a high school where we had, I was very privileged and blessed to have experience academically where my school was using laptop from the 6th grade through high school. So, and even before that in elementary school, at home, I had an easy access to a computer. You know, when my father wasn't using one of them, I was using one of them, and I was a computer gamer, mostly learning games at the time, math based things and English language things, learning things. But yeah, so I really got familiar with that world through him. He's built plenty of products and services over the years, and I've been a part of debugging. I've been a part of, again, that's removing flaws, maybe in the code, something, left a comma where it shouldn't be, or, a missing bit of code that tells a computer to do something. Finding that, having to problem solve, troubleshoot, figure out, okay, if we are, looking for this outcome, but what if this happens? What do we do? And so I've been in this world my whole life. I really don't know a different experience, for good or bad, but I don't know a different experience. I don't want that, though, to make you feel that you can't, if you don't have my story, be in this space. That's not true. You can. Like I said, there are online courses. Some are free, some are paid, and then, yes, there are degrees. But the biggest thing is, can you create something that works? That's really what's going to get you the job. So at around, honestly, I say 13, but I can't even really remember because every project kind of folded into the next one. I guess in a true entrepreneurial fashion, it's like you just see every failure isn't a failure, it's just a redirect. So this is something that this is what I've known, entrepreneurialism. My family, we're immigrants, so that kind of keep trying, keep going is part of it. And they were immigrants from Jamaica. So not that this is like to represent the whole island, it's not, but there is an entrepreneurial quality. Many people have to make their daily wage via their own small businesses on the island. So my grandparents on either side, on both sides, were also entrepreneurs. So it's something that I'm very familiar with. And my family, we've never thought small. And I remember, I call him Mr. Brown. We say it's a term of endearment. But I remember my father basically building things, and over time I was like, oh my gosh. And then I said, wait a second, we're building AI, like this is what's happening. And it's like, yeah, we are. So it's kind of laced so much into my being, and there's a lot of things that I will not get into because trade secret. But yeah, so that's my story of getting into it. I'm sure you're wondering, okay, so what do I think about AI, the industry as it stands, where it is now, where we are now, da-da-da-da. We've got something awesome. Like I said, serious inquiries are for another day, or another email account. But as far as the industry, there's a lot that is still to explore. What did I write specifically so I don't get off track here? Yeah, so I'm sure many of you have heard about ChatGPT, and if you haven't, it's from OpenAI, which at one point had Elon Musk on the board, but I believe he was asked to step down. Don't quote me on that. Nobody accused me of anything. I'm not in his business, I'm in mine. But basically that and Dolly, these are, they're very exciting. I think they're parts. My understanding of AI is we come from a general AI perspective, which is kind of a much broader form of intelligence, basically. Much like the human brain, there's so much that builds on top of itself until you have, the massive, wonderful intelligence of people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, or, Melody Hobson, or Steve Jobs, or you name them, right? And all of those things that we learn as people and, come to understand and take in over time, consciously, subconsciously, that sort of thing, they create us But on top of that, they are things that allow us to problem solve uniquely, do things, have agency as human beings. That is the kind of AI that we are into. And it requires a whole lot of work. When I say a lot of work, I mean whatever you imagine, triple it. And we're at the stage right now where it works, which is really cool. Because like I said, the vast majority of software projects actually don't succeed. They don't achieve either the full scope or at all what they intended. So the fact that it works, mind-blowing and really cool. Like I said, I've got stories, not today. So yeah, the other people in this space, the other companies in this space, I see them as parts of a much larger concept of AI that you'd see, in the movies. So essentially, they're parts of that. They're parts of the artificial intelligence that mimics human intelligence, agency, decision making. And when I say agency, I mean, of course, with the permission of the user. There are a lot of things and a lot of ways that, AI does not have to be this pessimistic narrative that is either sold in movies to keep the story entertaining, or is thumped by people who don't necessarily have any familiarity with technology. I don't blame them. I think a lot of people in this space do not do a good job of communicating in general the benefits, and I think oftentimes just because of the dollar, which, trust me, we all want. But you can still make ethical decisions. Basically, there can be win-win scenarios where the public wins, we win, and nobody is being harmed. That's not an impossibility. But part of why I'm saying this to you and why this video even exists is your voice is needed. The industry needs everybody, all kinds of people. You're not too old, you're not too young, you're not too this, you're not too that, you're not too big, you're not too small, you're not too dumb or too smart to be in this space and to be contributing valuably to it. And the more people you have working on a project, the more well-rounded the result is, the better the project is with those inputs. The one thing you cannot be afraid of is new ideas if you're working in tech, and especially in AI. And new ideas often come from difference. Sometimes difference of opinion, difference of origin, religion, family, gender, identity, orientation, whatever. All of it brings something as a perspective that you won't get if there's only one kind of person in this space. And that's why I encourage, I've done things working with teaching, developing courses and whatnot, but I'm not currently in that space right now. Perhaps in the future that'll be something that we are, making available, but there's a lot of things that we want to do right now that are strictly focusing on the business. The only reason why it's so horrible right now, or at least it can feel that way depending on where you come from or what your perspective is, it's just because there's not enough people who are able to make decisions in that space, in the space of CEO, co-founder, CTO, Chief Technical Officer, COO, Chief Operations Officer, Chief Development, administration, all that stuff. There's just not enough of everybody. The industry needs people. Now, I know that there are some things with layoffs of this and that from this and that company. I won't comment on that because I mind my business and I mind the general survey. There are some spaces that are just, I don't step in other people's crap. I just don't. things I want you to remember about AI. It's designed to be a support, not to take over. I mean, if it's done ethically, that's what you're thinking. It's a companion. That is how we at our company think of this. And I said this in a Twitch stream like a few years ago, Twitch podcast with some amazing teammates at the time. AI is a companion to human functioning. It's like any tool. It's on how it's used by the owner. It really is about who is holding the tool. I like people, so that helps. All right, and yeah, I want to encourage tech literacy. True AI, in the academic sense of true AI, again, general intelligence, you know, that requires time, patience, and personal sacrifice. So yeah, it hasn't been always so easy. But I'm really glad because I think we're kind of done with that phase. Like I said, it works, yay. And we've kind of only just begun. There are so many ways to get involved in AI, specifically if you're looking for it. Emailing me at my YouTube is not really gonna get you in, just because I box things. I keep things where they need to be, and this is a fun place for me. This is a hobby. You know, emailing our recruiter, that's more effective. It's more effective. Again, this is just the beginning. It's exciting. It's cool. Like, I actually love seeing the progress. So there's much more to come. So I'm going to encourage you to keep your mind open and don't let anybody scare you out of this space. It's for everyone. We all use technology and we can all create it. Figure out what you love in the sciences and you know, recognize that half of the glamour of tech is egos and the other half is really good marketing. So you shouldn't look at it like, I'm not in it, I don't know, I'm behind, I don't think I'm allowed in. This club doesn't technically have a door. There's just a lot of people standing in front of the door. You can push in. It'll be a push, but you can push in. And the other half of that is, you know, keep your circle of support tight, keep them informed. They don't have to know everything, but don't be afraid to reach out. Ask for advice, ask for help. That's the smart thing to do when you don't have the answer, or you have the answer, but you just need more hands to help you. Listen to those who have traveled a similar road and stay learning. And, have a hobby. Like watching my other videos on this channel right now. So like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Lauren. I will see you in like the next half second when you watch my next video. Thank you so much.